Hey there, we just shot this fun class over on Facebook Live and we have archived it here for you, and we made stamped friendship bracelets.
Yeah, we incorporated different blanks and used friendship bracelets to turn them into a bracelet, and we showed you how to tie the strings on, how to end it, a little bit about the knots, and we included a bunch of great different resources to learn more.
So if you are watching this on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, we'll get back to you. My special guest, Lucy Kelly, my daughter, thanks for joining us.
Of course.
And let's get into the video. This is the two bracelets that Lucy made for me for my 50th birthday. Aren't they awesome? She surprised me. And she even did the stamping on the one with the purple, and I did the stamping on the other one. Let's start by talking about, how did you kind of come up with this idea?
So because of like quarantine and social distancing, I've been very insanely bored all the time. And I was like looking through my stuff and I found a bunch of old friendship bracelet strings, so I kind of got back into doing it, which I haven't really done for years. And then also during the whole social distancing thing, I was helping my mom a bunch with packaging. And as I was restocking a bunch of our various blanks, I came across the rectangles that I used in both of her bracelets. And I like immediately kind of just thought that would be perfect to tie a friendship bracelet onto. And it'd look really cool. And so then I asked for a couple stamped on them and then started going. Okay, so the ones that we have over here, this one is the one that I made for my mom. And the other two are ones that we either just started or put together for this specific live. This is one that my mom started making. I taught her how with, we wanted to use different types of blanks. So we used one of the washer blanks and went off of it with some like candy cane stripe type of bracelet. This one over here is just, I stamped that rectangle and I found one of the old bracelets that I made a very long time ago. It's a very simple style and is just kind of a tube, and I just tied it on so that the bracelet was made before the blank, and just tying it on is an easy way to put an old bracelet or one that's less complicated to like tie onto the blank itself onto one and still make it look really cool.
Nice. So yeah, this is when she taught me how to do this the other day, although I spent summers making these. I made probably hundreds of these and it was all coming back to me. It was super fun. So she showed me how to do it. We decided maybe we could do it on a washer. The other idea we had is to use a blank and just punch like holes, and maybe the holes would be close together and you can tie through those.
Yeah.
Or this is very easy to pierce and saw out of any blank if you wanted to make like a little slit like that. So there's so many options, and this one was just really fun with the flowers, and I tried to choose kind of fun colors to go with it. Oh, let's show them this one up close too. Was this pattern difficult?
Yeah, it was especially difficult for the specific style in the blank because it uses 3 of each color instead of 2, so I need 3 different strings of every single color. And that's a bit hard just because the way that I would tie them onto the blank is by looping them around, which means that I would have 2 of every string that I like put on. So I had to, if you flip it to the back, I had to tie off extra strings in the back. And so especially the beginning of this bracelet was very hard just because those ones would get in the way a lot.
That makes sense. All right, so I'm going to pull this stuff out of the way. And what did you want to get started on? Tying on the strings or over here, this?
Tying on the strings. As you can see on this one, we have the 4 different colors on this side, and I just had 2 of them over here so then I could show you guys how to tie them on the way that I did. So I'm going to mirror the pattern on each side. Oh, is that right? Yeah, I'm going to mirror the pattern on each side so then the colors are actually going to be opposite. So as the blue is on the top on this side, it's going to be on the bottom over here. Mm-hmm. So the next color to put on would be this light purple that we have. And the way that I did it was I would fold it in half and take the loop and stick it downwards through whatever hole I had. And then I'd pull it through and loop it around the string to tie it off. So open this up, put the string through, and you'd pull it just so then you're looping it around itself basically, make it a bit tighter, and then boom.
You flip it over to show them how it looks different on the other side, and that's why you want to make sure you're like inserting it the right way.
Yeah, this is the reason why I put the loop downwards through the hole instead of upwards. That's just because it looks a bit better when you have the bracelet going off of it, on both sides even. And then just to review that, the other string that I have to put on is this more of like a pink tone. And the same thing, you just loop it downwards through the hole, and you put the string through and pull.
Nice. Now, one of the main focuses of what we're talking about today is just this, like, we know how to make stamped pieces, and we've given you ideas on what different blanks to use, but we wanted to show how we tie on the strings. We're going to do a little bit of the knotting, but after the show, we're going to put some links in the comments to some YouTube videos that really go over it more thoroughly than we're going to today, because it takes quite a while.
It does.
Right? So we'll put some links to YouTube videos and then a website that Lucy goes to for patterns. And patterns can be super tricky, but the one that we're doing here is pretty simple. That's why she taught it to me. There's one other thing and then for the strings, we got these at Michael's.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they're pretty straightforward. What is it called? It's like a D... It has a name. Somebody put in the comments what this is called. It's like a DS something.
I'm not sure. I always, when I'm trying to look up if it's on Amazon or something for this specific type of string, I always look up embroidery string, or craft string also works sometimes, or just friendship bracelet string. And with the types that I have some that I got from Michael's and some that I got for very cheap from Amazon. And as you can see, they have very different textures. The ones on the left are from Michael's, and the ones on the right are from Amazon. These ones are from the company Loops and Threads, and they're a lot nicer to use, especially for beginners, because the string doesn't fray or come apart. Where like with these, the string is only just like twisted together pretty loosely, so it can kind of come apart really easily, which makes it harder to use. I personally like these colors and the ones that they come with, and the kind of texture of them a lot better.
These ones?
Yeah, so I like to use these, but if you are not used to doing this, it's a lot harder.
They're called DMC string. I mean, embroidery string for sure, but that's the name I was thinking of. I just looked it up. Super easy to find. Do you remember how much they were per thingy?
I don't. They're pretty cheap, though.
Super cheap.
Yeah.
Like these, we got a huge pack of pastels for not very much. I was just thinking of, Lucy, before we move on, do you want to show them how to start getting the thread out so it doesn't all...
Oh, yeah, that's another thing that goes along with the whole quality thing, is that with these strings, it's really hard to pull out without it becoming a huge knot and you having to take off these little black tubes to actually get your string, because it's just not like put into its shape very well. But with these, it's pretty easy to do. All you got to do is find any sort of end, which can be kind of anywhere. Usually they're at the top or the bottom. This one's been used a little bit, so I'm not sure where it is, but I found it at the top. And you just want to hold the black parts with your hands. You can hold both, you can hold one, it doesn't really matter. I like to hold both with different fingers. And I just pull the string, and as it pulls, it just unloops itself, and then you can get yourself a long thing of string.
Yeah, I was trying to do that last night, and it didn't undo so easily, so it made a huge mess. I mean, maybe sometimes they're more knotted up in there. Just go slowly and careful, and then if you do get a big knotted mess, we just undo it and tie it around like, I think we were using cardboard just to sort of hang on to it.
I really like to use a clipboard, just because it helps it hold the bracelet without it flipping around, because if you're just kind of looping it onto something, the bracelet can flip a lot. For this is one that I've been working on. This is another rectangle, and I just put it under the clipboard. I usually like to keep the metal part of the clipboard on the strings, just so then it doesn't like make any line on the metal part itself. And also another thing about these two compared to each other is that this is used with the cheaper string while this is the more like better quality. I think that this looks a lot more matted, which I personally like, and this has a little bit more detail within each knot. So that's just kind of the difference between how they both look in a bracelet. And this pattern is a lot more complicated than that one, but they both work fine.
And then if you wanted to actually clip the metal on, you could put like a little cushion there so you're not hurting it, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Although we've been doing that all day and you don't seem to have little lines on it, do you?
No, not at all.
Like that would be good, like cushion it a little. Okay. So are you going to clip that guy on and show us a little bit of the knotting?
Yeah. So also when choosing a pattern, you want to make sure, especially for the beginning, to have 2 of each color for the pattern, just because you're folding each string in half, and it's just a lot easier if you don't have to cut things off like I did with the purple bracelet that I explained earlier. And so with this diagonal pattern, actually let's just start on the other side. So I like to work from left to right.
Let's get a little zoom action here.
Okay. I like to work from left to right. So I always start on the left side and start with those strings and work my way over. The way to start this specific pattern, which is really good for beginners just because it's very simple and it's easy to see if you messed up and where you messed up, instead of other patterns where you can only really notice that later. For this one, you just want to start with the leftmost string. And with this specific pattern, you actually have to knot it on one of these lighter purple strings or whatever is the next color. I like to just take this one and put it over the other one just to keep them separate. And always the beginning looks bad, so don't worry about that, it'll look better later. So the way that you want to tie the most basic knot, which is used in every single friendship bracelet, is you want to make this kind of 4 shape using your 2 strings. I like to hold it with my thumb, and you see how this kind of makes like a 4 like that. You want to have the top string, or the string that you want to see within the knot, over the other one, and then you loop it under the straight string and you pull it through. And then when you're pulling up, you want to keep the string that you don't really want to be seen very taut, I guess is the word, and pull this one up to make a little knot. And you do that twice on every knot that you're trying to make, just to make it look a lot better. And the next part, you do the same thing. You take the same color that you want to see, because we're doing an extra thick diagonal line for each. And you want to make the same 4 shape like this, put it under, and pull up. And you do that again. And then those you can move to the side, and we're going to do basically the exact same thing with these ones.
Oh, I didn't see how you started it before. Now I understand.
Yeah. You just do the 4, pull it through. And you always, it matters what pattern you're doing, but for this specific one, you always want the 4 to face the left side, or else it will start to attempt to go the other direction, so the stripes would be backwards, basically. So because this is like just the beginning, and tying them on is a little bit different than you would if you just did a normal loop, it looks pretty bad, but as you keep going, it'll look better. The next thing that you're going to do is just leave the one on the very left out. Take the second one, which is our like pinkish, and the one after that, which is one of the light purples. And you do the same exact thing twice on each.
Now, obviously, when you guys are watching this on the replay, you're going to want to pause and do what she's doing. I know we're moving fast, but that's so you can get an idea.
Also, Mom, you're going to link some of the videos that I showed you, right, that explain in depth how to do each of these knots, because I'm just going a bit fast just for the live, but you're going to link some videos that actually show how to do it a lot better and how to follow any pattern on a website like the one that I use.
Let's move this up a little. There we go.
And so I just did the first 2 rows of knots. I'm going just left to right and doing rows. And so now I have these 2 strings on the very left that are next to each other, and I'm just going to start with those, because every other row you want to skip the one on the most left. and this is the third one. So now I'm putting in this new color for the stripe, and you're just going with the one on the left, the one next to it, and you're just doing the same exact knots 2 times each.
Is that what you do all the way through?
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I was doing.
You were going color by color, but you can't do that at the very start, that's why.
Oh.
You can do that once one of them is done.
Oh.
Yeah, so what my mom was talking about is that she was going color by color when she was knotting it, which you can't do at the beginning if you want that flat line. But if we switch over to this side, let's see, where is that? What she was doing was just taking the leftmost color, which you can do once you finish a full line. After the beginning, you just take the leftmost color and you tie it with the same exact knot twice on each, on every single string until you get to the end. That's a bit easier to do, and it's kind of faster too, but you just can't do it at the very beginning just to have that flat line at the start. Because if you just start with just taking the color and going from left to right, it's just going to be a more diagonal start, which will just look kind of weird, especially for doing it on a blank.
Okay, let's try to get extreme close-up so they can watch the knot, like, really scoot up. Let's move this. Can you guys see that well? So see how when she pulls that up, the color that she's working with is always on top? You got to make sure the knot doesn't come up kind of evenly. You want to kind of layer that guy on top, which once you do it a couple times, it makes sense. It's pretty easy. So throw up some questions. Kimberly says, I have a natural born teacher here. She's really good at explaining things. She has done this her whole life. And Sonia says, you sound like a real pro.
Thank you.
Sonia also asked if we use a jewelry saw for the rectangle blank. We didn't, because the blank comes like that, Sonia, and there's a link in the comments I put up. We carry that blank in copper and in aluminum. And you certainly could, though, saw out a slit out of anything. So let's see, what else do we want to talk about here? Yeah, so again, the knotting that we went through pretty quickly here, we're going to recommend some YouTube videos that are going to be a lot easier to follow because they specifically talk about the knotting. We're more wanting to talk about how to incorporate this with some stamped pieces. So we did want to talk about ending, though. Do you want to end this guy?
Yeah.
And then I can actually, after you end it, I can actually trim it and do it that way too.
That sounds good. So for ending one, if you want to, my mom is going to show a different way that she did it on this bracelet, which I'm going to pull up. This one, where she ended it with a straight line and she used clasps on this side and a jump ring over here, so then you can clip it on like a bracelet. But I'm going to show how to end it like a lot easier and not using any sort of clasp or anything. The way that I like to do it is I like to just tie a knot at the very end. And you want to keep it as close to the bracelet as possible, just so then it doesn't...
Like to the end of the knots?
Yeah, so you want to do it pretty high up and just pull it tight right there. That works.
And I see your questions about how long a string to use. We'll get to that in a little bit.
And then I like to do a kind of twisting end, kind of like I did on this bracelet. If you can see that. This one's just one that I made a while ago. So I take the strings and I split them up in half. I like to keep the colors kind of separated just because I think it makes it look better. So I'm going to put the blue and the purple on the right and the orange and the kind of magenta tone on the left. And you want to take both strings and twist them to the right or to the left, just as long as they're both twisted the same direction.
It's like twisting hair.
Yeah. And then after you twist them just a decent length, you want to twist them together, but the other direction of how you just twisted. So I twisted each half of the string to the right, and now I'm twisting them together to the left. And you want to just keep going, make it as tight as you think you want. So I like to make them pretty tight just because I think it looks cooler. And then once you get kind of the length that you want, you just tie it off at the end again. And I do this just so then you can do that on each side and then just tie it together. That's a little bit harder to do just because you can't really take it off as easily unless you make it large enough to roll off your wrist. But with this one, you can take it off with a clasp. But this, you just do that on the other side and just tie them into a normal knot around your wrist.
And then are you just going to trim that?
Yeah.
And then this is a part you would tie together?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And usually I do that longer, but just for show reasons.
That's how this dude is, right?
This guy is a little bit different because I wanted to put a slip knot on it, so I don't like the way that this turned out, and I don't recommend doing this. But I twisted this side, and then I kept one string out on the knot over here, made a loop, so then you can do a slip knot that can go up and down the wrist part, just so then you can pull it off of your wrist easier. I think it didn't look very good. If you have a better idea on how to make that look good, please tell us. And my mom, this part was a little bit too long for her, so she just cut off the end and tied it into a knot. And so it's just a slip knot that you can put up and down to make it smaller or bigger.
Cool. Okay, so back to this guy here. Before I show how I got a clasp on there, do you want to talk about how to kind of guesstimate how much string to cut for each side?
Yeah, so I always like to use way too much string than I need, just because there's a lot of fun different projects that you can see on YouTube or Instagram that you can do with just extra string that's too short to make another full bracelet, or you can use that extra string to do very simple bracelets like just a nice braid or a twisty that goes all the way around. And so, like, for example, on this one, this side is definitely long enough because you need 2 of those to actually fit around your wrist, and I think this one might be honestly a little bit too long, and I still have a lot of string left over.
And we probably cut that at like
I did
4 feet.
Yeah, I did my arm length, like all the way, like
your
yeah,
wingspan?
my wingspan. I just did that because you have to fold it in half. If you're gonna do a bracelet that is supposed to go all the way around your wrist instead of just 2 halves like these would be, then you want to maybe double that length. But for these, I would say do somewhere around a wingspan.
Yeah.
I'm pretty small, so I don't really know, but
maybe like 4 to 5 feet, but honestly that we still have like 1.5 feet here.
And we have a lot of string. Like, I think we used this bundle for that color, and as you can see, we still have a lot left over. You go through it a lot slower than you'd expect, and honestly, the trick is just to cut way too much, because if you cut too little, that's a lot worse.
Yeah, then you're bummed. We have learned that lesson. Okay, so just checking in on comments real quick. Awesome. Okay, so when Lucy gave me these bracelets for my 50th birthday, and when I was done crying, this one was really long, and I couldn't even tie it well enough to fit tight enough, so I was like, I want to wear it all the time, and I do wear it all the time. You can see it's like super worn. So what I ended up doing, and it was a total experiment, is I took scissors and cut it where it was like really even knots, and then I just put a ton of glue over that spot, let it dry, put more glue, so it's really sealed. Now this isn't a nylon cord that you could like burn to seal it, so that doesn't work, but I thought I would show you on this one because this is super long. So what I'm gonna do is kind of hold it up to this one to see how long I should cut it. Looks like probably right about there. See what I'm doing here? And we'll talk about how to shape the blank and all that. Don't let me forget that, Luce. So I'm just gonna come in and cross my fingers that I did all these knots well enough, and I'm gonna cut and not let anything unravel. And then I'm gonna come in with hypo cement. Isn't that sad? I cut that piece off. And just put a ton. Now there's a little piece that came off, and that's fine. You're gonna have that happen. I'm gonna put a ton of glue on here And you could maybe have put some glue on before you cut it. That wouldn't be a bad idea. But I'm really getting it all over. And with this little needle on this glue, which is awesome, I can get it into tight spots. And I'm gonna let that dry and then do it again, just to make sure that it really, really holds. So now I'm gonna put this back in the glue, and I'm gonna let you guys watch so you can laugh at me if I can't get it. Are you laughing at me, Lucy?
Yes, I am.
Ah! My head is like 3 feet away from it. You do it, you have sharp eyes. Thanks, child. Okay, so does that make sense? And you're gonna wanna, like, you know, put it on your wrist and decide where you're gonna wanna cut it so it fits right. Now, to get the jump ring in, I was thinking, I guess you could use a hole punch and try to like punch a hole, but I just opened up my jump ring and held it with my pliers and just took the tip of the ring and just sort of burrowed it through until it popped through. And that worked just fine on both sides. And I wear this bracelet all the time, and it really holds. Such a cool pattern, Lucy. I don't know how you did that. The only thing with bracelets like this, it's really hard to put on and off by myself. But this is sterling clasp and some really strong jump rings. Any questions about that?
We just have some suggestions. Like, one person said that to put these strings kind of through the bracelet right there. Mm-hmm. I think what she means is just like if we were doing this one to keep the strings going all the way through.
Oh,
which
yeah.
That might not be what she's saying, but that's what I think it is. That's also a really good idea. I just did this because I kind of like doing it more section by section, and it might have complicated this just because it's bent.
If you had a finished piece, like here's a finished one, you could just slide it through to the back and back out the other side. Maybe that's what she's talking about, so it just sits on there. It's just you did all this work that you can't see, but that's fine. Okay, so for bending this, gosh darn it, I don't have my bracelet bending pliers.
Oh yeah, I took them.
Hang on, we took them home. Well, I can use this. It's nice having our camera in the same room that we shoot, that we make all the samples, so all my tools are 2 feet away. I would use my bracelet bending plier, which are nylon jaw, and will you go ask Colin to grab you a pair?
Yeah.
Cool. And you squeeze this and it starts to form it into a shape like this. You could also use something like this if you're working on a metal that's soft enough. This is alchemy, where I could just place it on here and sort of bend it around the large loop. Could also maybe hold it over a ring mandrel. You don't want a really sharp bend, but just something to help support it. Because you can see how, let me zoom out here. On a wrist, it's sitting really flat is kind of strange, where it forming to your wrist a little bit sits better. So these are the nylon jaw bracelet bending pliers that I love. And you would just put it in and have it face, the detail would face up. See how if I squeeze it, it's going to make it into that little smiley shape. And you want to do it kind of everywhere. If you wanted a more drastic one, you could use a ring bending plier, but it just gives you like the perfect little shape there.
Somebody else asked if a hole punch would cause fraying within the string. I think definitely, but a way around that is I think if you put the glue on where you're going to hole punch, it might work a little bit better.
Yeah,
but I think my mom had the right idea with just kind of burrowing the jump ring through the bracelet just to prevent the fraying. I kind of like the way that fraying looks when it's on like the end of a bracelet, like right here. But
hold it there a little longer.
But in the middle of a bracelet, I don't think it would look as good. Like, I like it when these strings get frayed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would make sense to maybe once we once you punch the hole, you could put a little bit of glue on it to make sure that everything stays, you know, in place. But I wear this all the time. I even wore it in the shower a couple times, and it's stayed really nice because it was so well made.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, we talked about string. We're going to give you some links on how to go more in depth in learning. We're also going to give you a link to different patterns that are free. We talked about how to shape the middle. We talked about how to end it. There's a link in the comments on already to this blank, which is really cool. I had these blanks made actually a long time ago because there's a project in my first book where I used them, and my first book was written in 2007, so it's a long time ago. I had them made in sterling. We don't sell them in sterling anymore because no one was buying them, so we just have them in copper and aluminum. And like Lucy and I were saying, you could definitely use different washers. You could use circle blanks and punch a hole in it to tie the string through.
Honestly, anything.
Oh, you know what? It was another cool idea is we sell square washer blanks. Mm-hmm. And that would be cool because you could just come out the end and then have something stamped on the top and bottom and have a little bit of skin showing in the middle.
Yeah.
And this way a little bit. So lots of fun ideas. Let's check out. Chris was saying, would a small piece of Velcro work on each side inside to help with taking it on and off? Yeah, that would help, but you'd have to cut it perfect so you're not like scratching yourself. What's happening with the focus here? Why doesn't it like me? It likes you better. Thank you for joining me.
Of course.
You're real good and smart, and I'm real proud of you. I'm gonna cry. Mom, don't. Okay, see you guys later. Thanks.